Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Double E's Talk Tech. My name is Mike Hoffman.
My name is Daniel Bogdanoff, and today with us we are super honored to have Ray Billings. He's kind of the resident villain on BattleBots. Turns out he's actually a pretty nice guy because this is our second time trying to do this podcast because the first one didn't work out. So Ray, thank you for being so gracious. Even though you get a bad rap on TV, it seems like you're a pretty stand-up guy.
I like to think of myself as a nice guy, but it's amazing how easy it is to slip into that bad guy role. I actually kind of enjoyed it.
Fair enough.
And for the sake of disclosure, I should say I've known Ray for probably about 14, 15 years now. Went to high school with his son, and we were thankfully lucky enough to be able to sponsor him and his robot in the latest upcoming season of BattleBots Season 3. Ray, do you want to tell us a little bit about that before we jump into some Q&A?
Sure.
And today is virtually May 10th, just so you know.
What's that?
Today is virtually May 10th.
Virtually May 10th. Got it. All right. My entrant is Tombstone. It has been the number one ranked robot in the BattleBot scene for the last few years. In Season 1, I came in second. I lost in the finals. And in Season 2, I came away as the champion. So right now, I am the BattleBot. Right now, at least, I am the BattleBots champion. Okay, we have to see how this season plays out. Yeah.
Did they give you a crown or a trophy? Or
the trophy for winning BattleBots is a giant nut.
Okay.
I'll send you a photo so you can use it.
Sounds good.
It's pretty big. So I have one giant nut.
Good to know. Have you ever thought about hitting it with Tombstone? Leaving your mark on it so when it gets passed off that like Tombstone was here.
Yeah. Well, I tend to not turn the Tombstone on too much outside the arena. It just scares the crap out of me, to be honest.
That's fair. Yeah. So, can you, just to start things off a little explosively, because everyone loves combat robots for the carnage, can you tell us about a time where something just kind of melted down and went up in flames, or good carnage stories?
Yeah, that always happens. There's always stuff that's breaking in ways that you didn't think it could. A few years back, I fought a robot called Alcoholic Stepfather. Okay. The front wedge plate across the front of it was an inch-thick piece of titanium, which I hit and pulled off the robot and twisted it. It was bent about 15 degrees end to end. And he took it into a place to try to get it straightened, try to get it flattened. And they go, "Well, what'd you do with this? Hit it with a train?" I mean, he still couldn't convince them that this happened in a combat row. They were never able to get it flat again. So the amount of energy that's being unleashed is just unbelievable. I mean, you see things that you don't think could possibly break just get shattered and sprayed all over the place. It's if you've never seen it live, I'll tell you right now, video doesn't do it justice. If you've never seen it live, you really have a hard time understanding how much power is being unleashed.
Okay. That's scary because the videos are pretty phenomenal. If any of our listeners or watchers here haven't seen BattleBot highlights on YouTube, pause the video and go watch some of this stuff. It is pretty phenomenal.
And speaking of BattleBots highlights, BattleBots Season 3 airs on Discovery on May 11th.
Correct.
Is that correct? So tomorrow, and I hear through the grapevine it's going to be a pretty spectacular episode.
The first episode, assuming they edit it and they show the matches in the order they told me, because they don't necessarily clue me into all of that stuff.
That's fair.
Assuming it happens the way I've been informed, I'll be on the first episode, and my first match is one of the most epic BattleBots matches of all time. You'll have to just see it to believe it. It was really pretty cool.
Sounds fantastic.
To put that in context, how many BattleBot matches have you participated in?
Actual on BattleBots, the show, I don't know, 50, maybe. Actual matches in all of combat robotics that I've done, I think we're over 1,000 for the team.
Wow,
that's a lot That's a lot of fights to the death.
No kidding. And so how long have you been involved in this combat robotics sport again?
17 years. Our first event was in 2001.
Okay. And how'd you get started on this? What kind of spurred the idea on?
At one point in time, I taught computer networking at an adult college. And my particular boss, the department head, was a fan of the show when it was back on Comedy Central back in the day. So he would tape it on VHS tapes, and he would bring them in, and we would watch them, between classes and whatnot. And I had a lot of fabrication background. He had a lot of electronics background. So we got the idea that him and I were going to do this together. Unfortunately, life took him in different directions. Got a different job, went in different ways, but that was kind of where the bug started for me. So then it just turned into a father-son project between me and Justin, and we've been at it ever since. Yeah.
It's like, hey, son, do you want to play catch, or do you want to go smash things with robots?
Well, and I'm probably more mechanically inclined than he is, but the reality is it's something we've both had a really good time with. And, he's sort of grown up in the sport. He's got a lot of championships, too. He's done very well in it. And, now that he's an adult out on his own, it's a great way for us to still schedule time to get together to do things. So it's a great for us to stay connected with something that we both enjoy so much.
That's really cool. That's really neat. Can we switch over a little bit to kind of the engineering side of things? So,
sure.
Can you describe the design of your Tombstone is your main robot, but if there's another one you want to talk about, feel free. But Can you kind of walk us through the design blocks of that?
Sure. Tombstone is a horizontal bar spinner. Sometimes it's called an offset bar spinner because the weapon bar is offset out in front of it. The rotating mass varies in weight depending upon which weapon bar I choose, but usually it's around 70 to 75 pounds, somewhere in there. It spins. I actually had to slow it down a little bit this year, so it spins at about 2,500 RPM.
Is that a tip speed rule? I think I heard or read something about that.
Yeah. They initiated a tip speed rule that says you can't have any part of the robot going faster than 250 miles an hour. And I was in excess
That's
of
pretty fast.
So I had to slow it down. I actually haven't really run the kinetic energy numbers to see how much it hurt me. It didn't look like it changed much in effectiveness in the arena.
Sure.
But yeah, it's spinning pretty good out there. Usually, whatever
There's a big blade bar spinning out front.
Correct.
Okay, and then it's connected to a body.
Right. The frame is all made out of 4130 chromoly tubing. So same thing like
mountain bikes and
any of your motorsports, a lot of them use that. The drive motors themselves were originally for an electric wheelchair.
Oh.
And then the weapon motor is sort of an industrial motor. One of its uses was in electric golf carts.
Okay.
So that's essentially what I'm using to power the drive and the weapon system.
Have you ever thought about trying to play golf with Tombstone? Because I feel like that would be something else.
Dial that tip speed down to about 105 mile an hour.
Well, the thing is, the duty cycle, a match is 3 minutes long.
Mm-hmm.
So, people design, motors to run for months, years, decades, whatever. I need it to run for 3 minutes. And if it sets itself on fire in 3 minutes and 5 seconds, that's a good motor. That was perfect. So I tend to push things a lot harder than they were designed to be pushed at. So, like the weapon motor is designed to run at 48 volts, but amp limited to 300 amps. Well, I run it at 60 volts, and at spinup, it's pulling just over 1,000 amps, 1,100 amps, somewhere in there. And so
wow.
it's an amazing amount of power that I'm pushing through it, and there's no way that it could hold up for any length of time like that. It would overheat incredibly. But I just need it to work for 3 minutes, and that's all I'm after. Is it's a very limited duty cycle, and so I'm going to push it as hard as I can for those 3 minutes.
So 48 volts at 1,000 amps. That's
You said 60 volts.
Yeah,
60 volts. So 60
and it's pulling between
kilowatts.
Between 11 and 1,200 amps at stall when it spins
Holy
up.
Moly. Okay.
So
talking about 70 kilowatts, 80 kilowatts.
Yeah,
potentially.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you use a startup capacitor or anything to get it kind of kickstarted, or just
a
run it?
Big marine relay, just click and on it goes. Yeah.
You only need it for 3 minutes, so.
Exactly. So yeah, it's what I'm doing is really hard on everything that's in there. But that's kind of the point. I need to spin up instantaneously. I can't. I don't want to slow spin up because the other robots are pretty fast. They can get across the arena in a second and a half. That means I better be lethal in a second. And so it takes about 3.5 to 4 seconds to get to top speed, but it'll get to 80% of top speed in that 2-second range.
Okay.
So,
how often does your motor stall out mid-match? Is that a pretty regular thing, or?
That if somebody's going to get me pushed into a corner and it looks like I'm going to be in a bad spot, I'll usually just turn it off. And so I'll let it go ahead and, it's still spinning and they can bump me into the wall and bleed off whatever energy's there. But I'm not trying to power through it, because if I do that, then I will actually start burning stuff up. And usually try to get out of the corner in a way where I can spin up free again before I do it. So the only times you see it off in the arena is either if something's broken or if I turned it off specifically just to save batteries or electronics.
Okay.
Now, there was a number of matches, I don't know how many numbers, but at least a couple during Season 2 where I saw that your weapon system did break, and you're kind of just cruising around with a weapon bar that isn't spinning.
Right.
What is generally the weak point in your design, if you're willing to share? I guess the competition's over already.
Right.
Is it the motor itself? Is it the batteries? Is it the actual drive system, like the chain or pulley that you use? Or?
Yeah. Okay. So the couple of times that I've had it break on TV, there was a one match against Witch Doctor where the weapon bar actually snapped in half. Mm-hmm. And I use a high grade tool steel to make those weapon bars out of. So they work great all the way up to that instant when they don't, and then they fail spectacularly. They don't bend. You're not going to mush it. It's just going to snap. That's the nature of tool steel. And so in that case, everything still worked. I could have spun it. I just didn't, because if I do, it's out of balance, and it will literally just disintegrate the rest of the robot from shaking. The other match where the weapon stopped working was against Yeti last season. And if you actually watch the match, I kind of hit him and he bounced up and he comes down kind of on the nose of the robot, and his weapon just caught the edge of the chain and peeled it off the sprocket. So everything was still working. It just wasn't connected anymore. And it was just kind of a 1 in a million type thing. There's no real, I've found most of the general weak points. There's a few things that can still break. The shock loads can sometimes crack the case of the motor, and things will start dragging inside. I have broken the chain before.
Do you build in any sort of like shock absorbing stuff, like instead of like rigidly mounting everything? If you were to pull off the cover and look inside, it would look like it's rigidly mounted. It's actually, the weapon motor's mounted to a titanium plate, and titanium's kind of springy. It's got quite a bit of movement to it. And then there's a kind of a rubber block at the bottom to limit how far it can move. And so it actually does have some shock mount built into the system, although to the casual observer, it doesn't look that way. If you open it up and look, it looks like it's solidly mounted to metal. Well, it is, but it's that titanium's got quite a bit of spring to it, which is a big help. Makes sense.
There's also a clutch system built into the sprocket so that some of the shock loads from the big hits doesn't come directly back to the motor.
Okay. Because it seems like potentially you have to handle any sort of hits that you're also delivering, right? Yeah, the weapon bar hits, like
that equal and opposite thing really sucks. It's horrible. Yeah. The upside of that is that the way mine's designed, I can kind of swing it around and bring the weapon bar into the spots on them I want to hit. So as opposed to just spinning up and hoping I hit something good, I can kind of direct it a little bit. And so that helps a lot, because if you can pick the spots you're hitting on the other guy, that's better than trying to hit just the hardest spots that they're going to feed your weapon. So there's no way around it. You're still going to take back all of the same shock load. But if it's coming in a direction you want rather than the one you don't want, then it's easier to handle.
Sure. That makes perfect sense. Like, columns are no good sideways, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I would feel remiss if I didn't ask this question. I'm assuming by now you can probably use the eye test because you've had this design for going for so long now. But maybe early on or even now, what kind of test challenges did you have assembling this system to make sure things actually worked properly or diagnosing things when they weren't? I'm assuming by now it's probably like Legos for you. But
I've built these frames often enough now I could probably do it in the dark in my sleep. I mean, yes, I've gone through this a lot. But, there wasn't really any shortcuts. It's kind of like you can say, okay, you can try to run numbers and try to design something around what you think the loads are going to be. And then they're nothing like that when you get in the box. I mean, it's chaos, really. And so what you kind of have to do is just put it together the best you can, go in there, and when something breaks, come back and figure out, okay, maybe that's only going to happen that one time, but it's probably going to happen again at some point. How do I design around that one thing and fix it? And then you go back to the next event and you break something else. And you just keep doing these small little iterations over time to get to something that becomes more class dominating. I mean, the first build of this that I did was probably 2004. And it was a middle of the pack robot at best. I mean, it really wasn't what you called class dominating. It just takes a while to slowly work your way forward to get to that point where you can really just sort of have an idea of everything that's going to break and have a way around it.
I remember seeing your garage back in the day when I'd come over and play video games with Justin. And, it's quite an impressive collection of tools you have. And I know you'd never spin the robot up in your garage or even if you're in your driveway very, carefully, whatnot. But do you have maybe like a foam or like a Nerf weapon bar that you can attach at least you can turn the thing on, make sure it works? Or how do you test that? I just basically either leave the weapon bar off or take the chain off. I can go ahead and test to make sure everything's functioning correctly without actually spinning it. And so I'll do that routinely. Usually once before I go to an event, I'll actually throw a weapon bar on and spin it up in the driveway just to make sure that it handles and drives like it's supposed to. My biggest worry there is because it moves so much air, it'll pick up debris off the driveway and it'll sort of spray stuff around. So I'm sure my neighbors think I'm kind of weird because I'll go out there and I'll get the shop vac out and I'll vacuum the driveway first to make sure that there's nothing out there before I spin it up, just to make sure that I'm not spraying anything away at tip speed. Well, what do you think your neighbors? What do you think your neighbors think is more crazy? You shop backing the driveway, or you coming out with a 250-pound robot that's spinning at 5,000 RPM?
It's kind of weird. I don't know because the thing is, if you're out there vacuuming, they know what you're doing and they know you're odd. Okay, they know they at least recognize this person's
frame of reference.
Yeah, when the robot's just sitting there, they have no idea what they're looking at, so there's no frame of reference of what's going on.
Oh, man.
Let's talk battery tech briefly.
Yeah.
Okay.
So how has that changed over the years? And what do you use?
Yeah, battery tech's changed quite a bit. Originally, we used to run lead-acid batteries, which fall on their face when you're trying to draw a lot of amperage, and they weigh a ton. But that was the only thing that I could get that would supply the type of amperage that I'm pulling. Sure. From there, we switched to NiCads and nickel metal hydrides, and they're okay. They're more power dense, but it still wasn't enough for what we're after. Almost all your top teams now will use some sort of lithium chemistry, either lithium polymers or lithium ferrites. And it's made a huge difference in everything's about power to weight ratio in the sport. So you can get an amazing amount of power, and it doesn't take a whole lot of weight to do it. And it's made probably one of the biggest technical advances for combat robotics over the last few years.
That makes sense.
I have a really funny question to ask. It just dawned on me. I almost want to save it for the stupid question at the end, but I have to ask it now.
Okay.
We're talking about battery technology to power the robot. The answer is very obvious, but I'd like you to walk us through why none of these combat robots are gasoline powered.
Well, we do have flamethrower robots in the competition, and so having fuel in there is always going to be an interesting combination with flamethrowers because you could get a pretty interesting fire going on in there. They do allow gasoline engines at BattleBots, so Icewave runs a 15 horse partner chainsaw engine to run his weapon on there.
I just assumed they weren't allowed for safety issues. Okay.
Well, it's funny. There are other events that simply have said, no, we're not going to allow it. BattleBots still does. And there's no great technical advantage to it. I mean, the power to weight ratio is pretty good, but some of the other the dependability aspects are a little less compared to it. So far, we haven't got one of those big poofy gasoline explosions in the arena. I'm waiting for that day. I think that would be kind of funny.
Yeah. I guess the plexiglass or with the Lexan they have wrapping the combat arena is pretty thick. If I had to guess,
that is the stoutest arena I have ever played in. It's pretty significant. Yeah, I'm not too worried about it. Any real damage from anything coming out of it.
Have you ever wrecked an arena before?
All the time.
Okay.
Yeah. So the arena rails inside there are 1/2-inch thick steel. And I can cut a hole in that big enough to slide a Coke can through. So there's some pretty significant energy being unleashed. So yeah, I've broken Lexan panels where they've had to be replaced, or I've slung parts off of the other robot into the ceiling and ripped lights assemblies down and whatnot, and they've had to go back in afterwards and fix things. We've had some interesting close calls too. I can't tell you about the exciting one, but yeah, when we get to the end of season 3,
have to tune into the show.
Yeah. When we get to the end of season 3, there's an interesting one that we can talk about later that you guys will really like.
Sounds good. Let's talk communication systems. So, car remote control modules, or are you doing your own stuff, or what does that look like?
Yeah, it used to be they'd have little frequency crystals, and they had air frequencies and ground frequencies and whatnot. Today, almost everything is running on the 2.4 gigahertz. It's digitally encoded between your transmitter and the receiver. So that makes it good that you don't have one transmitter can't accidentally control another robot. That was their biggest concern.
Like randomly turn on a weapon or something.
Yeah, that would be bad. Okay.
Yes.
So it's all basically off the shelf stuff for RC planes. They're the ones that have a lot of programming capabilities for mixes built in, and plenty of channels, so you can do lots of different things on your robot. So everything I use is just basically off the shelf communication gear.
Okay. What about drive wheels and that type of thing?
The drive
standalone motors, or
yeah, the company that I get my drive motors from also supplies me with the wheels, and they're a rubber type tire that you normally would have an inner tube in, but instead they fill them with a expanding foam, so they're sort of a solid. They can't go flat. In fact, I've had matches where I've had them cut in half, and they still work and they still stay attached, and you can still drive on half. You just sort of flop around as you're going, but you'll still move.
Okay. Interesting.
Now, obviously, with the spinning bar, you're kind of you're talking a little bit about the equal and opposite reaction kind of thing you have going on, where every time you hit something, you kind of get the shock back. Now, I've seen some interesting things where you're talking about flopping around on the wheel. You talked about damaging your blade. And when things start getting off balance, it's like you kind of have the centrifugal force of the bar helping you, and kind of maybe absorbing some of that impact, kind of like trying to tip over a spinning top. But then it's also got to be real bad if things aren't balanced correctly.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Well, in my case, the bar is spinning in the same plane I'm turning in, so I'm not fighting it when I'm driving. Like any of the verticals, when they turn, you see them kind of torque up because they're fighting that gyroscopic force. That's good, but if something bumps me and I get out of plane, then the gyroscopic force wants to make me stay there. And I've had some instances where that was, I'll get bounced and I'll get up at an angle, and then the gyroscopic force will just hold me there. Now, it might only be 4 or 5 seconds before it falls back down, but I'll tell you, when you have the control in your hand and you're fighting a guy that wants to kill you, those are the longest 4 or 5 seconds of your life, waiting for that thing to slowly drop back down to the floor.
Interesting.
You get some really interesting effects.
I've seen some amazing acrobats from Tombstone flying around in the air. You kind of get this effect.
Right? Do you have to tune it to the point that you're adding paint to center weight out, or it's not really?
No, as long as I machine everything correctly, then it comes out balanced. So it basically it's on me to do my job right when I'm making the parts to begin with.
Okay, that makes sense.
If I screw up, it lets me know.
Fair enough. Yeah. Sounds terrifying.
So tell us, we got a few more minutes left, but I'd like you to maybe tell us a little about who else is on the Hardcore Robotics team.
Okay.
And maybe take a few minutes to plug what all of our viewers can look forward to seeing tomorrow.
Okay. The team for the past few years has been me, it's been my son Justin, and my good friend Rick. Rick used to run his own combat robotics team, and I don't know, probably 10 years ago, he decided that he was joining forces, and we've actually been a really good team. So it's just been the three of us for quite a while now.
He came to the dark side, basically.
Yeah, well, I think he just decided that he's a great fabricator, but he's not a really good driver. So
okay.
he wanted to work on robots. He wanted to go to events, but he didn't want to drive his own robot. He just wanted to run the pits. And so
sense.
in that regard, I think it's been a really good fit for both of us.
That's great. That's really cool.
So yeah, the team is the three of us, and I can see that will probably continue for a while. Our team chemistry is really good. The show for tomorrow, we should have 6 fights, I believe, is how they're going to do it. It's going to be 6 fights an hour. This particular season is going to be 20 episodes, so 21-hour shows. They're going to do 10, and they're going to take a break, and they're going to do the final 10. So you got a long season of robot combat. It'll be shown on both Discovery Channel and on the Science Channel. So there's a couple of ways to see it. The matchup for me that's coming up is it kind of got leaked on some of the preview things that they've got going. So I don't know if it's been officially announced, but since you guys are doing this the day before I can tell you that the fight's going to be a good one. It's going to be Tombstone versus Minotaur. So this is the two biggest hitters in the game essentially going at it, and you're not going to want to miss it.
Now, do you love going up against people like that, or would you rather just come in and crush somebody?
Play with your food a little bit, as the announcer so well put it last season.
Yeah. Okay. I'm ready to fight anybody. So anybody they stick in the arena with me, that's the guy I want to fight. Whoever's on the other side of the box. This is a case where their format's a little different this year. You're going to do 4 fight card fights. From there, they're going to pick who they think the top 16 robots are. And then they're going to have a 16-bot tree to a champion. So these 4 fights up front, the only thing you're doing there is trying to get your spot in that tree of 16. So I'd have been much happier if they'd given me 4 chew toys up front, and I saved the robot and all the damage to it until that tree of 16 where it actually mattered. So I'm ultimately very happy for the opportunity to fight a high-quality robot. I just would have preferred it was a championship rather than my very first match of the event.
Yeah.
So it's actually, this format's kind of hard on a robot like mine because it's just so much energy being unleashed. You can only do that so many times before things start breaking.
That's what I was going to ask. You're talking about, I think I read on your website, hardcorerobotics.com, that a given frame will last maybe 2 or 3 fights before the frame bends. I'm not sure how long the bars last, motors. How long do you think, kind of like your body, kind of shedding its own cells and regrowing new ones, are you bringing like multiple complete robots to the BattleBots competition, or?
No, I didn't, and I sure wish I had. So trying to keep the frame going, usually I can get an event or 2 out of a frame. And because of our short time frame this time around, and because I really didn't have any damage from season 2, essentially the robot was what came out of the championship at season 2. I repainted it and charged batteries, and that's what I took to season 3. And it becomes difficult to keep something like that running over that length of time. And with this new format with more fights, it's going to be even harder.
Okay.
So long term, I'm assuming that this is going to be a big hit on Discovery. I'm assuming we're going to get renewed. I'm probably going to end up with a couple of frames at least going forward to every event I go, just to make sure I've got enough parts to keep going for the distance.
Okay.
Right.
And we're just about out of time, but I want to get one more question in, and I want to be respectful of your time. In like 30 seconds or so, how do you feel about combat robot kits?
Kits? I think it's an awesome way to get people into the sport, especially in the smaller weight categories. So, if a lot of people out there go, hey, I want to do that. How do I get started? I'll point them to some of the ant weight and beetle weight kits. They're a great way to get people started, get into the sport, and they can have a good time and learn a lot of skills without putting a ton of money and development time into getting something to work. And then from there, they can figure out what they want to design and do on their own and do something different.
Okay, great. We at the end of every episode, we like to do a stupid question for our guests. So, Mike, would you like to kick it off?
What was your most favorite defeat in BattleBots competition, or just in combat robotics competition?
My favorite loss for us. Oh, boy, that's a good one.
Tearing off the Band-Aid there, man.
No. There's been some good ones. There was a match back when Tombstone was still a super heavyweight. So we're going back a long time ago, 340 pounds. And in a match, I snapped a weapon bar in half. And rather than be the play it correctly and just leave the weapon off, I left it on and I kept trying to attack him with half a weapon bar. And that thing shaked all over the arena for almost the full 3 minutes before it finally died. It broke every motor, every piece of electronics, everything inside was shattered because it just sat there and shook itself to death. And it was hilarious to watch afterwards. It wasn't at the time. I'm still fighting, but afterwards when I was watching the video, it's like, why didn't I just turn that off? What sort of idiot am I? But it was pretty funny.
Okay. I had a question, then I lost it. Oh, if you had to do it over again, would you design a different weapon system or stick with the same one? And if you mixed it up, what would it look like?
There's a couple of other things that I would like to do. I've got an interesting take on a hammer robot I still may build at some point in time. I think a full shell spinner might be kind of interesting. I could see me doing something like that. And I've actually got parts and plans going for a pretty nasty vertical that I'm planning on building. So down the road, I actually have something new that I'll be bringing. I'm not sure when and where, but it's on its way to being built right now.
Do you spin that down or up? Up.
So what you want to do is when you hit somebody, that equal and opposite thing, right? He's going to go up and you're going to go down. Well, you've got the mass of the arena and the earth underneath you, so you got a little mass advantage. It makes it a little easier for them to fly up from there.
Okay. Before we go, because we are at a hard stop here, merchandise or anything you want to, Hardcore Robotics T-shirts, you can model your shirt for us.
Okay. Yeah, there you go. You get
the Grim Reaper on the back. Nice.
All right. You can get the team shirt for us and for all the teams. On the BattleBots website. So you go to battlebots.com and then they have a web store or something in there. And all of the team gear is available there. Right now, I think all they have listed is just the Season 2 robots, but I'm sure that they'll be updating that as we dive into Season 3. So you'll have all of that stuff. And the shirt they sell there is the exact same one that I'm wearing here. Awesome. There's also the BattleBots toys, the Hexbugs toys. So you can get those at Target, on Amazon, and online, a couple of different spots, and they're a lot of fun. So there's a little push strike ones, and there's little RC ones you can actually fight. And they're kind of fun.
Very cool.
Team building event.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm thinking about the kits. Anyway, we are out of time. We got to let you get back to your day job or night job at Intel. Okay. So engineer at Intel and the resident bad boy of BattleBots, Ray Billings. Thank you so much for being on the show. It's been
no problem,
pleasure.
Guys.
You're on it twice. Our subscribers missed the first one because it didn't get recorded.
So. It's all good.
Sorry.
It's all good.
Yeah. So subscribe to Double E's Talk Tech on your favorite podcast engine or on the Keysight Podcast YouTube channel. I'm Daniel Bogdanoff, and of course my co-host
Mike Hoffman.
Thank you for listening and or watching, and we'll see you next time.
See.